overeater. I I weigh and measure 3 meals a day from the gray sheet. I I write it down, call it into my sponsor daily. I don't eat in between no matter what. And abstinence is the most important thing in my life. And for me, it's about the food, the food, the food. When I was compulsively overeating, the food had a chokehold on me. And I just, I could bear my willpower to bear on every part of my life except my food. I could not, it did not do a bit of good to try to use my willpower. And I just was so mystified at that. And it made me angry too. So now that I'm abstinent, I love my food. It's a defense against the first bite. I love, love, love my food. And I've been experimenting around with different things lately, my food. And I really have come up with some great things. Only one thing I tried, I really didn't ever want to repeat again. But anyway, I do love my food. When I was growing up, my mother took me downtown. There were no malls when I was little. And so we went downtown, and she gave me a sack of sweets to eat, and she told me to follow her around while she shopped. Well, I dropped to the floor and started eating the sweets, and she would pull on me and say, "Come on, follow me." And I wouldn't budge. I mean, I was laser focused on that food, on those sweets. And as soon as I finished eating all of it, I got up and did follow her around. But that's focus on the food as a compulsive overeater. And then I focus on the food now as a gray sheeter. Another time, when I was a preschooler, a mother brought me home from her son's birthday party. And her comment to my mother was, "Boy, she sure does like to eat." Well, the thing was, I didn't get to eat unsupervised very often. And that was unsupervised. And you know what they have at birthday parties: sugar, sugar, sugar. So I'm sure I was in my element. And the other times I wasn't supervised is when I got to stay with my grandmother or my great aunts, but very seldom. My mother was the gatekeeper for the food. And, she would put the brakes on if that was needed to be. The way I got my food was I ate 2 meals at every meal. Now that worried my dad because he knew that eventually that was going to catch up to me. So, but that's what I did. And so I always thought I was fat growing up, but I wasn't. Pictures show that I wasn't. I think my dad would make comments every once in a while, and it made me feel like I was fat. And so I think that's where that idea came from. So I wasn't overweight as a child. I started gaining weight when I went to college. And for me, college was a life choice. I entered a community of Catholic nuns at 18, and I did in the community what I did at home. I ate 2 meals at every meal. Well, the way it happened was we were seated at tables, 4 at one end, 4 at another. So the people at my end knew that I wanted anything extra that was left over. And then soon the people at the other end got to know the same thing. So they passed any extra food down to me. So, and if all else failed, there was always a loaf of grain on the table, and I could fill up on that. So I just continued doing what I did, um, as growing up. Um, and um, I this was when I was out assigned to a teaching position. There was a petty cash pouch in a drawer in the kitchen, and it was for the kitchen sister, the sister in charge of the kitchen, who would maybe come up short of something and need to run to the store real fast. Well, she could just grab some money from the petty cash pouch and um, go use it. But I discovered this, and so I started stealing money from that. And this went on for a while. And then one day, the person in charge of the house said to us as we were gathered together, the sister in the kitchen tells me that money is disappearing from the petty cash pouch. Well, I tell you, I blush, and I mean, I'm tomato red when I blush. So everybody knew who it was. Well, I didn't do it anymore after that, of course, because I had been found out. Another time, I took some ladies from the parish to a retreat, and I had not brought any extra food with me. And I got there, and they served meals, and they were great for normies, but not for a compulsive overeater. I would eat the normie meal, and then I was still hungry. So what I would do is at night, I would stay up late, and I would go to their freezer and get something out, and then just let it defrost and eat it like I would get that night for the next day. Again, I was stealing. Here I was at a retreat, and I was stealing. But I didn't think of it that way. I just needed my food. I just had to have food, and I did that. Once I got into Gray Sheet, I realized how, the stealing the money and stealing from the freezer, those were things that were really wrong. Anyway, I gained more and more weight. Once I asked a sister in the house for a recommendation for a gynecologist. And I got the name of this gynecologist, and I made an appointment and drove up to St. Louis. I was about an hour and a half from St. Louis. And anyway, he's at one point in the appointment, he says to me, "When are you going to join the St. Louis Cardinals?" Now, I knew he was referring to the Cardinals football team. They also had the baseball team, but I knew that he meant the football team because football players are way much more, and that's what he meant. Well, I was young. I was between 23 and 26. So if it had been later on, I would have just jumped up and out of there and then reported him to the American Medical Association. But, I didn't do any of that. I just cried all the way home. I was so upset. I got into OA in 1979, and I was only in there for 6 months, and I was transferred to Western Nebraska. And there wasn't any OA in Western Nebraska. So I did diet center, and I did lose 50 pounds, but I didn't reach my goal weight, and I got tired of doing it, and I started eating the usual way, and of course, all the weight came back. Then later, I was transferred to West Texas, and I remembered how much OA helped me. So what I did was I drove 4 hours one way from where I lived in Alpine, Texas to El Paso, Texas. And on Friday night, I would go to an OA meeting and then spend the night with the sisters and then drive back the next morning. And I did this about every 3 weeks. So I told the person in charge of pastoral ministry. I was a teacher at first, and then I changed over into parish work. And so anyway,
That's 10 minutes, Pat.
oh, thank you. So anyway, so what she did was she had me missioned, because that's what we call being transferred, missioned to Kansas City. And I was in OA for 12 years. I was 12 stepped into GreySheet on December the 6th, 1995. And my abstinence date is June the 16th of 1997. It took me a while to get abstinent, because I would do things like leave I'd leave vegetables in the microwave, and I didn't, in other words, I didn't sit down and make sure everything that I was going to eat was in front of me. So my sponsor would put me back to day one. Out of that time, though, 18 months, I did have like 7 months that was back to back. So it wasn't just day one all the time. I wanted to talk about my no matter what. In 2000, I had a 50-pound weight gain because of medicine I was on. And it wasn't because I let, I ate off the GreySheet. It was just, that's the way that medicine was. But I was told I was bipolar, and the medicine helped me so much. I never realized that a person can feel that good. So I stayed on it for a year. And then I told the doctor, is there anything else we could try? Because, 50 pounds and me being in this program, it's just not working. So he did find something else. Also, I've had 2 complete knee replacements, and I took 15 weighed and measured meals with me to the hospital, and I was abstinent. And I had 5 foot surgeries, and I was abstinent through all of them. For 8 years, I had chronic back pain, and I found a doctor who could do minimally invasive back surgery, and the pain was cleared up, but I was abstinent through that whole time. And then I fell in January of 2019 and broke my hip. So I had a complete hip replacement. And a GreySheeter got me through 9 days in the hospital, 2 weeks in rehab, and the first 4 days back at home. But I owe my abstinence to her. At the hospital, we absolutely could not get anything that I could eat. So I just am so thankful to her. What I do to stay abstinent is I weigh and measure without exception and no matter what. I call my sponsor on time. I have sponsees. I make phone calls. And I do struggle to do this, but that's my New Year's resolution, is to try to daily, really not just do it here and there, but do it every day. And so I've been successful so far. And meetings help me so much. I'm so glad to be on this meeting tonight. I've never been on it, and it's wonderful to be on a meeting like this. And again, I said that I love my food, and that's how I stay abstinent. Why I stay abstinent is because I want to stay rid of the cravings.
1 minute left.
Thank you. I want to be rid of the cravings. The cravings were terrible. I hope I never forget what the cravings were like, because again, this is a defense against the first bite. I don't want those cravings back. I want to be rid of the mental obsession. I want a solution to my addiction. I want to be a member of this tremendous fellowship. And as I look back over my life of abstinence, I can truthfully say that if I just stay abstinent, everything will be okay. And I'm going to end with this. If I am abstinent, all else will follow. Thanks for letting me share.